Hello, welcome to day 29. And in this lesson, let's see how we can make our design pick all our static files so that it can look similar to this, right? So what we can do is understand where do we even have the static file. Remember, we created the static file where we have the JS, CSS, and all of that. So now, how can we reference it? Every of those things, especially the CSS, is on the base, and we have them just right here. So let's just locate it and see what we can do. Now, for us to always use our static file, the first thing you need to do at the top of your HTML is always load static. You load the folder, so you load static. If I save the file and I refresh, everything should still work the way it is. But now that we have static loaded, what we can do is look for where we even have our CSS. Now, for us to really do something nice, we can just go ahead and reference our tag, but this time around we're going to say static. Let's do this. I'm going to just copy this part and put inside. So you can see what we are doing. What we are doing really is we are referencing the static file. So this is helping us to fetch it wherever we have it, which is here. So by the time you open the static file, you can see that the next you have is CSS, then style. If you open this, you see style.css. Let's load it and see if we get the right results. Nothing is happening yet. So let me see if we can replicate this. I'm not really sure if there should be / there. Let's duplicate the same thing here. Just going to copy this. Okay. If I refresh, nothing is happening yet. Okay, so let's try to check if we're missing any block of code. So I think we need to reference something else. Yes. So we are not telling the Python to use our OS path. So let's just copy this and let's see in our setting, just below the 2 lines. So basically you're saying if the ball is false, you want to reference this part. If it's not false, you want to reference this part. But for it to work, we need to import OS. So let's just say import OS, and that should fix it. Okay, now let's refresh and let's see if we have something running. Perfect. This is exactly what we want. Okay, now that we have our code looking a bit similar, let's see if we can reference some of this. In fact, let's see what we have here. You can see some icons are missing. So let's see if we can reference them. So we're just going to go back to our lists. No, I think it should be in the base. Oh, okay. We actually should copy this to the base, this header to the base, because it's the navigation, and because navigation is going to appear on almost all the pages. So it makes sense if we take it to base and just paste it right after the body. If we go back and still refresh, it should appear the same way. Now let's see things that we can change. So we can just replicate this our styling here. And do this as well. Yeah, that should display this. So let's see another image that we have. This one. I'm just going to copy all the way, delete from assets. If I refresh, you can see we have this one. Let's check further. We have asset here as well. We have asset here. So I can just go ahead and close it. 9%. Just copy this. And if I refresh, you can see that we have something similar to what we had. Pretty much cool. So the next thing is for us to fetch this information from the database. And for us to do that, it means that we need to check our view. So the view is basically inside our employee. So instead of this template view, we need to update to ListView because we want to list our data. So we can just say ListView. Meanwhile, we need to import it here, ListView. Okay. Now that we have this, we need to reference the model, the table that we want it to list. In other words, we also need to import from models, import, okay, I think it has to be from models, import employee. So now what we want here is model is equals to employee. So now we are referencing the table here, which of course makes sense. Now we can say, another thing we can say is in our template, how do we want to reference, or what's the keyword name that we want to call this very class? So we can just say context. You can see context object name. So we can give it employee. Okay. Now we've really turned our code or our class to ListView. In other words, we should be able to list all of our employee. Now let's go back to our list and let's do the magic. So this name right now, I want to be able to serve all of this dynamically. So let's just start with 1. So this is employee directory, and okay, so this is for 1 person. The cool thing about server-side language is we only just need 1, and the program is going to duplicate it for us. So how do we do this? In fact, let me just duplicate this. Then remember, we named our view, we name it employee. Let's see how we can make use of it right now. Remember I said for us to write Python code, it has to be inside of a curly braces and your percentage. So let's run a loop. Now we've grabbed an object. We grab object of all our staff, right? Because we have about 9 of them. So they're coming as a form of object. Remember, we learned about object. So now let's reference all of them. So we need to then say we can say for staff in employee. Remember where we got the employee from? Here. Okay. Now we can just say employee dot all. Actually, we want all of them. We need to end the for. So we just say end for. Okay. Now we're running a loop, and in fact, if we just go ahead and refresh our program, let's even see what we get. You can see that you get multiple, even though we repeated ODs into 9 places, right? Which is understandable. So instead of duplicating just ODs all the way, why not we just put the actual data? So now that we know that everything is printing, we can just go ahead and delete all of this. Just delete everything so that we just have this one. Okay, now if I refresh, only just have ODs in 9 places. Okay, in this our loop, we already know that this is our variable staff, right? So what we can do is reference the images, the name. In fact, let's start by the name. So I'm just going to delete this one. Now to reference a variable in Django template is 2 curly braces. So we're just going to call the variable staff dot first name. Remember that the first name, that's what we have here. First name, last name, email. I'm just going to reference all of those. So if I save it and we refresh, you'll see that we have ODs, all their first name. Which is understandable. So now let's reference the second name. So I can just give space and just say last name. And we should be able to get both their first and last name. This is really cool. Now let's do for their position. So I'm just going to update this to position. And finally, we can just update this to, what do we even give it? Should be employment type. Employment. Then we have type. Yes. So if we save it, yes, we should be able to have all the employment type. What is left right now is our image. So similarly, we can reference our image. All we just need to do here is to say image.url. And perfect. You have all of their images. Remember, the URL is very, very handy. If you just say image, it's not going to show. Let's inspect. You can see that you have just the image and it's not referencing the path. So let's see the magic that the URL does. URL, if we refresh, can see it's referencing media, employee, and 23, which of course makes sense. Great. And if we come here and search, say ODs, okay, the functionality is not working again. Alt name is ODs. So I think we're just going to copy this and replace here. Okay, this might not still work, and I can tell you why it's not working. I don't think we fixed the JS. I don't think the JS was fixed. So let's go to our base and scroll down here. So we need to do our static. We don't need this asset. We need this, then our percentage static. Let's have it here, and oh, we need to have this here as well. Let's have this here. Okay, I think it should work now. If I say Odis, yeah, perfect. If I say Dale, everything work. So pretty much we're able to display our content from the database, right? The cool thing is that we're able to do this just with this very similar or simple line of code. What we had before was a duplicate of this in 9 places, but right now we just one. We're able to run a for loop and be able to reference your object. You call the object and you say the dots, whatever file name, just like we did when we learned the object. One thing about all of this is if you do not follow from the beginning, it might look a bit confusing, but in real sense, all of the things we've just done right now is the combination of all the things we've been learning all the way from day one. And if you don't understand any part, feel free to go back and rewatch the video and come back. You'll see that all of this will make more sense. Now, talking about you wanting to delete, or yes, so you could also delete and also add more users if you want. You can play around, add more users and update, and whenever you update, it's going to show on the front end, right? So pretty much initially we had a front end, just something very static. Now we've built a backend for it. It's really dynamic. We can control what data goes up and what data we want to remove without stress. And that's how we wrap it up on this one. If you like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on all our social media handles so that you can be notified every time we release a new tip. Until next time, I'll see you in the next one.